At my husband's funeral, I saw him. In the crowd, he smiled and put his finger to his lips. Then I got a text message. Run, they're watching us. I'm glad you're here with me. Please listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. It was raining that morning, the kind of fine, steady rain that soaks through black coats and skin alike. The church smelled of lilies and wet umbrellas. People whispered, hugged, and avoided my eyes. I barely registered any of it. My husband's coffin stood in front of me, covered with white roses. His mother's choice, not mine. I kept thinking about the color. White. Too clean, too quiet. He'd hated white roses. Said they looked like flowers from a hospital. That detail haunted me, as if the whole ceremony were slightly off, like a photograph printed with the wrong tint. When the pastor started speaking, I stopped hearing the words. My mind drifted. The sound of raindrops on the stained glass windows felt louder than his voice. My daughter, Emma, squeezed my hand, but I barely felt it. Then I saw him. He was standing near the back of the church, half hidden behind two men from my husband's law firm. His face was pale, thinner maybe, but unmistakable. My husband. Richard. For a moment, my brain refused to process it. I blinked. My pulse stuttered. He shouldn't be there. He couldn't be there. But he was. He met my eyes. That calm, deliberate look I knew too well. No panic, no fear, just focus. Then, slowly, he raised a finger to his lips. Don't speak. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the pew in front of me, afraid I might faint. He was alive. Before I could move, before I could breathe, someone touched my shoulder. It was Linda, his sister. She leaned down, whispering, "You should sit. You look pale." Her voice was sweet, soft, almost maternal, but her hand on my arm was firm, possessive. I nodded and sat, my eyes darting back to where he'd stood. But the spot was empty. I searched the faces in the crowd, lawyers, neighbors, distant cousins. No one looked back. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe grief had finally cracked something inside me. When the service ended, I moved through the condolences like a ghost. People murmured the same phrases. He was a good man. He'll be missed. My daughter clung to her husband, Nathan, whose arms stayed tightly around her shoulders. He kept glancing at me, smiling politely, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. Outside, under the gray sky, Linda approached me again. "You shouldn't drive alone today," she said. "Come with us. Nathan will take Emma home." Her tone left no room for refusal. I forced a faint smile. "I'll be fine. I need a little time." Linda's eyes narrowed, just slightly, then softened. "Of course. Just don't isolate yourself, darling. Grief does strange things." She patted my arm and turned away, her black umbrella tilting like a shadow following her. When the crowd thinned, I stepped aside, pretending to fix my coat, and checked my phone. A new message blinked on the screen. Unknown number. Text. Run. They're watching us. I froze. My breath hitched. The message came exactly 1 minute ago. My hands trembled as I reread it. They're watching us. Us. That single word hit me like an electric shock. Whoever sent it wasn't just warning me. They were including me. With him. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the sound of rain. I turned slowly, scanning the parking lot. A few people still lingered by their cars, hugging, talking softly. Nothing unusual. Then I saw a black SUV parked across the street. Tinted windows. Engine running. I couldn't see who was inside, but the headlights were pointed directly at me. I looked away quickly, trying to breathe evenly. Linda and Nathan were talking near the church doors, both of them glancing in my direction now and then. Nathan said something to Linda, and she nodded, slipping her phone back into her coat pocket. It felt like a trap closing. I forced myself to move, step by step, toward my car. My fingers were so cold I dropped the keys twice before managing to unlock the door. When I got inside, I locked it immediately and started the engine. Another message appeared. Unknown. Don't go home. I swallowed hard, my eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. Linda and Nathan were walking toward their car now. Not fast, not slow. Watching me. I didn't think. I just drove. Through the rain, through the blurred streets of a town that suddenly felt foreign. My husband was alive. Someone was watching me. And whatever this was, it had started long before today. As I reached the intersection, my phone buzzed again. Unknown. Trust no one. Not even them. I didn't sleep that night. The rain kept tapping on the windows like fingers insisting I stay awake. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in my hands, staring at that last message. Trust no one. Not even them. Them. I thought of Linda's perfect sympathy, Nathan's polite restraint, Emma's confused face. The three people who had surrounded me since Richard's death. Always near. Always guiding my every move. Suddenly, every comforting gesture looked like choreography. At around 3 a.m., I made tea and sat at the kitchen table. The house was silent, stripped of his presence. No faint hum of his late-night work calls. No papers on the counter. No half-drunk coffee mug. It didn't feel like grief anymore. It felt like stage design. I opened the laptop and typed Richard's name into the search bar. Dozens of news articles appeared, all saying the same thing. Local attorney found dead after car accident on Route 27. Vehicle fire, body identified through dental records. I stared at the photo of the wreck. The car was unrecognizable, melted into the asphalt. The thought came sharply, like a blade through fog. It didn't have to be him inside. If the body was burned beyond recognition, how could they be certain? Dental records could be switched. That would require access, connections. And Richard had both. I scrolled further down the page. Comments from colleagues, clients, family. Condolences from the firm, from Linda, even from Nathan. The timing of some posts struck me. Some appeared before the official statement. That was impossible unless they'd known earlier. My throat tightened, but not from sadness. From clarity. For the first time in days, I felt something solid forming inside me. Resolve. If he was alive, he had a reason to hide. If he warned me to run, that reason involved danger. But danger from whom? From Linda? From Nathan? From someone at the firm? I closed my eyes and replayed the funeral, frame by frame. Linda's firm grip on my arm. Nathan's sharp looks, their constant insistence that I shouldn't be alone. Control. They were trying to control me. I opened my messages again. The number that had texted me was hidden. No contact name, no profile photo. I typed back, fingers shaking. Who are you? Where is Richard? No reply. I waited 10 minutes. 20. An hour. Nothing. When the dawn started to brighten the kitchen window, I realized I needed to make a choice. For days, I'd let them plan everything. The funeral, the guests, the arrangements. I'd moved through their schedule like a puppet. Now, I was done. I picked up my phone and called Emma. She answered on the second ring, her voice heavy with sleep. Mom? Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Listen, I'm going to take a few days off. I need to clear my head. Where will you go? I'm not sure yet. Don't worry. I'll text you when I get there. There was a pause, then a voice in the background, Nathan's. Low, muffled. Put it on speaker, he said. I froze. Emma hesitated. Mom, Nathan just wants to. I'll call you later. I cut her off and ended the call. I stared at the phone, pulse steady now. I didn't need to explain myself. Not anymore. I started making a list, an old habit from the years when Richard worked long hours and I managed everything else. Lists gave order to chaos. Things I know. Richard is alive. Someone warned me to run. Linda and Nathan are too involved. The accident may have been staged. Things I need to find out. Why he faked his death. Who is watching us. Where he is now. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. Around noon, Linda called. Sweetheart, are you home? I thought I'd bring you lunch. You shouldn't be alone. I hesitated, then said quietly, I'm fine, Linda. Please don't come by. I just need some time. A short silence. Then her tone changed, almost imperceptibly. Of course, take all the time you need. The line went dead. I exhaled slowly. That was the first time I had said no to her. It felt dangerous and liberating. The rest of the day, I packed a small bag. Cash, charger, passport, laptop. Nothing traceable. My plan was simple. Check into a motel a few towns away, somewhere anonymous, and start digging from there. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew one thing. If Richard risked everything to fake his death, there had to be something big, something worth dying for, or pretending to. Before leaving, I looked around the house one last time. Our photos on the wall, the framed wedding picture, the scent of his cologne still faint in the hall. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to cry. Grief was replaced by purpose. When I stepped outside, I noticed a silver sedan parked across the street. Same one that had been there yesterday. The driver pretended to look at his phone but never started the engine. I walked calmly to my car, pretending not to notice. If they were watching, let them watch. I had already decided I wasn't running anymore. I was going to find out the truth. And this time, the choices would be mine. The motel I chose was 3 hours from home, just off the highway. One of those places where no one asks questions and the neon sign never turns off. The room smelled faintly of bleach and damp carpet, but it was quiet. That was enough. I left my phone powered off and bought a cheap prepaid one from a gas station nearby. Then I opened my laptop and began retracing every step of Richard's last days. According to the news reports, the accident happened late at night on Route 27. He was supposedly driving home from a meeting with a client, but Richard never took that route. He hated that stretch, too dark, too isolated. I pulled up the police report. Public record. It listed the responding officer, the cause of death, the ID confirmation. Everything looked legitimate. Too legitimate. Every box perfectly filled, every date aligned. Almost too clean. Then I noticed something odd. The accident was reported at 11:42 p.m., but the coroner's report listed time of death at 12:06 a.m. The location difference, 15 miles apart. How could they confirm death 15 miles away from where the crash happened? I copied the details, saved them. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the realization that this was real. There was something to uncover. I called the police department, pretending to be verifying paperwork for insurance. The woman on the line was polite but cautious. That case has been closed, ma'am. All documentation has been released to the family. To the family, I repeated. Do you know who picked it up? Yes, a Ms. Linda Collins. Of course. After the call, I sat back and stared at the wall. Linda had handled everything, arrangements, paperwork, even the obituary. She'd kept me protected from the details. I'd believed her because grief makes you compliant. Now it made me angry. I opened Richard's email. His account was still active. Linda must not have thought I'd check. The inbox was empty, all folders wiped. Except one, archive. Hidden, nearly empty. Just a few unread messages from someone named D. Holloway. The subject line of the last one stopped me cold. You were right. They know. I opened it. The message was short, sent 3 days before his accident. Rick, you were right about the contracts. They've been funneling money through the firm for months, and Nathan's name is all over it. I'm leaving town. You should too. Destroy everything. DH. My chest tightened. Nathan, my son-in-law. The man who'd stood beside my daughter at the funeral. The man who offered to handle Richard's unfinished work. The pieces clicked into place with a quiet, terrifying logic. Richard had uncovered something inside the firm. Nathan was involved. That's why he'd faked his death. That's why he warned me to run. I needed proof. I found the coroner's number in the report and dialed. A man answered, gruff, tired. County office. I said I was calling about a closed case, gave Richard's name. There was a pause. Oh, yeah, I remember that one, he said. Car fire. Bad one. Can I ask who identified the body? Dental records. Came through from Dr. Levin's office. Dr. Levin was our family dentist. I'd known him for 20 years. Did anyone from the family view the body? Another pause. No, ma'am. It wasn't viewable. When I hung up, my hands were shaking again, but this time with something sharper. Controlled fury. I called Dr. Levin's office next. His assistant answered, cheerful as ever. Dr. Levin's out today. May I take a message? It's about Richard Evans, I said quietly. His records were used in a coroner's identification last week. I just need to confirm when you received that request. Her tone shifted. That's strange. We haven't had any requests from the coroner recently. Not for that name. Could you double-check? Of course, but I'm certain. I handle all documentation myself. I thanked her, hung up, and sat still for a long moment. The air in the room felt heavier. The identification had been falsified. Someone had used Richard's dental records without the dentist's knowledge, which meant someone inside the firm, or connected to Linda, had arranged everything. I pulled up a map of Route 27 in the coroner's office. The 15-mile gap between the reported crash site and the declared place of death suddenly made sense. The car had been burned elsewhere, maybe after something went wrong. Maybe after Richard disappeared. I felt sick, but not helpless. That night, I went through the old backup drive Richard kept in his home office. I'd taken it by instinct before leaving the house. Most of the files were encrypted, but one folder wasn't. Scans of legal contracts, transaction logs, property transfers. The same company names appeared again and again. Harper and Finch, LLP. Holloway Development. Collins Group. Linda Collins. It wasn't grief I felt now. It was clarity, cold and precise. They thought I'd break down and disappear into my sadness. Instead, I was beginning to see the shape of the whole thing. Before going to bed, I wrote one note on a torn sheet of motel stationery and placed it on the nightstand, next to the prepaid phone. If you're reading this, I found you first. M. Then I turned off the light and lay awake, planning. Tomorrow, I'd go to the cemetery. There was one last thing I needed to see for myself. The cemetery was almost empty when I arrived. The sky was overcast again, low and gray, the kind of weather that makes sound travel strangely far. Richard's grave was at the far end, beneath a maple tree just starting to shed its leaves. The headstone was simple, his sister's choice again. I knelt beside it, brushing away damp leaves. The soil still looked fresh, too fresh, as if it had been turned recently. I wasn't sure what I expected to find. Proof? Closure? Maybe just confirmation that everything was as wrong as it felt. I stood up and turned when I heard the crunch of gravel behind me. Linda. Her coat was immaculate, her expression calm. She carried a small bouquet of roses, white again. "I thought I might find you here," she said. "You've been difficult to reach." "I needed some time alone," I answered. "Of course," she smiled slightly. "It's just, people are worried. Emma, especially. She said you left town suddenly." "I needed space," I repeated. Her gaze sharpened. "From whom?" I didn't answer. For a few seconds, we stood there in silence, the sound of wind moving through the trees. Then she sighed and placed the flowers on the grave. "Grief makes us suspicious, Mary. It makes us see patterns where there aren't any. You've always had a vivid imagination." I studied her face. Every line of it was perfectly arranged: concern, patience, authority. But her eyes betrayed something colder, something that didn't match the words. "Tell me something," I said quietly. "Why were Richard's dental records sent to the coroner from Dr. Levin's office when Levin's assistant says they never received that request?" Her smile didn't falter, but her pupils narrowed just slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You shouldn't dig into things you don't understand." There it was, the first crack in her tone. No more sympathy, only control. "I'm not afraid of you, Linda." She tilted her head, almost amused. "You should be. You have no idea how deep this goes. Richard got himself involved in things he couldn't fix. You'll only make it worse." "Worse for who?" I asked. Her eyes flicked toward the parking lot. "Go home, while you still can." Then she turned and walked away, heels clicking on the gravel. I stood there, heart pounding, but steady. The mask had slipped. That was enough. Back in the car, I called the only person I thought might still be on my side. Tom Reeves, one of Richard's old colleagues at the firm. He'd always been decent, the kind who still believed in the law. He picked up on the third ring. "Mary, I was just thinking about you. I'm so sorry about everything." "Tom, I need to ask you something. Off the record." A pause, then a quiet, "Go ahead." "Before Richard's accident, do you remember anything strange? Meetings, calls, files he was working on?" He sighed. "I shouldn't say this, but yes. He'd been looking into some missing client funds. He said it led to people inside the firm. He didn't tell me names, but I saw one document, Collins Group. That's Linda's family trust, isn't it?" "Yes," I whispered. "Mary, listen. After his accident, they cleaned everything out. Files, backups, all gone. It felt orchestrated. Do you think they could have—" I stopped. "Whatever you're thinking," he interrupted, "be careful. Those people aren't just rich. They're connected. Richard was trying to protect you, that much I know." When I ended the call, my hands were ice cold. Linda hadn't just lied. She'd helped erase him. I drove back to the motel, every passing car in the rearview mirror making me tense. At the reception desk, the clerk looked up. "You had a visitor earlier," he said. "Tall man, dark coat. Said he was your brother." "I don't have a brother," he shrugged. "He asked if you'd checked out yet." I thanked him, forcing a neutral smile, then went straight to my room and locked the door. Someone knew where I was. The prepaid phone buzzed just after midnight. A new message. "Unknown. You're getting too close. Stop digging, or Emma gets hurt." My breath caught. My first instinct was panic, but it passed quickly. Fear wouldn't help her. I typed back slowly. "If anything happens to my daughter, the evidence goes public." No answer came. But I knew they'd read it. I sat down, breathing evenly, trying to calm the shaking in my hands. They thought they could scare me back into silence. They were wrong. I backed up all the files from Richard's hard drive onto a cloud account and sent one copy to an encrypted email address Tom had once given Richard for whistleblower cases. When I was done, I turned off the lights and sat by the window, watching the empty parking lot below. Somewhere out there, my husband was alive. He had trusted me enough to warn me. Now it was my turn to trust him, by surviving long enough to find him. For the first time since the funeral, I felt something close to strength. The storm had begun, but I wasn't the one running anymore. 2 days passed without another message. I barely slept, though not from fear anymore. From calculation. Every sound outside the motel room kept me alert. Not anxious, just aware. The silence between attacks was the most dangerous part. It meant they were planning something. On the third morning, Linda called. Her voice was warm again, perfectly measured. "Mary, please don't hang up. I think we've misunderstood each other." "I doubt that," I said, my tone flat. "I'm serious," she continued. "I know you've been under a lot of pressure. Losing someone like Richard, it can make you see shadows where there are none. But we can talk about this, face to face. No lawyers, no anger, just family." The word family made me flinch, not from emotion, but from disgust. "I'm not coming back," I said. "Mary," she sighed softly. "I loved my brother. I loved him like—" "Stop." Silence. Then a faint, careful pause. "You think I hurt him, don't you?" I didn't answer. Her tone sharpened. "You have no idea what you're doing. There are people involved who won't think twice about—" "About what? Killing me too?" The line went quiet. I heard her inhale, exhale, then say gently, "Come home. You'll be safe there." Click. The call ended. I stared at the phone for a long time. That was her mistake. She didn't ask where I was. She already knew. That afternoon, I left the motel and checked into another one under a fake name. Before leaving, I paid cash and wiped down everything I'd touched. I wasn't paranoid anymore. I was methodical. At the new place, I set up what I had. Laptop, notes, Richard's files. I needed something concrete, something that couldn't be denied. Tom helped quietly, forwarding me documents from old firm backups. "I'm risking my job," he said in one message. "So did Richard," I replied. Most of the data led to a series of shell companies, small real estate fronts that funneled money into offshore accounts under Collins Group Holdings. Linda's trust. Nathan's name appeared on several as legal consultant. The pattern was clear: embezzlement, laundering, tax fraud. Richard had found it, and when he tried to expose them, they'd silenced him. Except he hadn't died. The next evening, as I was sorting files, there was a knock on the door. My stomach tightened, but I said nothing. Another knock. Then a voice I knew too well. "Mom? It's me." "Emma." I opened the door slowly. She stood there with red eyes and a forced smile. "Can I come in?" I hesitated. "Did Nathan bring you here?" "No, he doesn't know, please." I let her in. She looked smaller somehow. Frightened. Fragile. I made tea. Waited. She finally spoke. "Aunt Linda said you've been acting strange. She said you might be having some kind of breakdown. But I know you, Mom. You wouldn't just disappear like this unless something was wrong." I sat down across from her. "What did Nathan tell you?" "That Dad was involved with bad people, that they came after him, and that Aunt Linda tried to protect us." I watched her carefully. "Do you believe that?" She hesitated. "I don't know what to believe." I leaned forward. "Listen to me. Everything they've told you is a lie. Your father isn't dead. I saw him." Her face went pale. "Mom?" "I saw him at the funeral. He looked right at me. He told me not to say anything." She shook her head slowly. That's not possible. I thought so too, until I found this. I turned the laptop toward her and opened the files. Copies of transfers, company statements, Nathan's signature on 3 of them. She read in silence for nearly a minute, her breathing shallow. Where did you get these? From the firm, from your father's backup. When she finally looked up, her eyes were full of something new, not disbelief, but recognition. He told me once that Nathan was too close to Aunt Linda. I thought he meant business. He did. She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. What do we do? For the first time, she said we. I reached out and took her hand. We wait. And we collect everything. We don't tell anyone where you are. You understand? Yes. She stayed the night. I barely slept, listening to her breathing, remembering when she was a child and afraid of storms. In the morning, she left quietly, promising not to tell Nathan. I watched her drive away, my heart both heavy and steady. 2 hours later, another message appeared on the prepaid phone. Unknown. You think you're protecting her. You're not. Stop while you still can. No name, no number. I stared at the message until my eyes hurt. Then I deleted it. For the first time, I didn't feel fear, only clarity. They were desperate enough to threaten again. That meant I was getting close. I opened my notebook and wrote one sentence in the middle of a blank page. They are watching me, but I am watching them too. Then I began building my timeline. Dates, calls, company records, transactions. Piece by piece, the pattern of betrayal emerged. By nightfall, I had the first full picture of how they'd done it. And for the first time since that text on the day of the funeral, I felt something like control return to my hands. They wanted me quiet. Instead, I was preparing to speak. The library had always been my place of quiet. Even now, sitting between the muted smell of paper and dust, it felt safe. Neutral ground. I came here to work on the files, but that morning, I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling the same question. Who else knew? I'd been staring at the same paragraph for 10 minutes when a voice broke the silence. Mary Evans? I turned. A woman, maybe in her 50s, stood by the aisle. Plain gray coat. Calm eyes. She looked uncertain, but kind. Yes? She smiled gently. You don't know me. My name's Jane Holloway. The name hit me like a quiet echo. Holloway. D. Holloway? She nodded. David was my brother. I froze. The man from the email, Richard's colleague, the one who'd warned him they know. Jane sat down across from me. I saw your missing persons notice from the firm. Then I read the reports. I know what they're saying about your husband, but it isn't true. Then tell me what you know. She glanced around before speaking, her voice low. David was working with your husband. They found financial trails leading to offshore accounts. Millions. When David told me what they'd uncovered, he said they were both scared. A few days later, he disappeared. My throat tightened. And Richard? He told David he was going to leak everything, but someone at the firm must have found out. After the crash, I thought they'd both been silenced. She paused. Until you showed up asking questions. For a moment, we sat in silence. The fluorescent light hummed faintly above us. Do you know who's behind it? I asked. She gave a sad smile. I do now. Linda Collins. I worked for her company before David did. She has people in every office, every department. The police won't touch her, not without proof. I have proof, I said quietly. Jane's eyes widened. Then you can finish what they started. I wanted to believe that, but belief wasn't enough anymore. We spent hours talking, comparing notes. Every thread led back to Linda and Nathan. Property transfers, falsified accounts, dummy corporations. By the time we were done, the outline of their network looked like a web drawn in ink and lies. Before she left, Jane touched my hand. "You're not alone in this, Mary. Don't let them make you think you are." That evening, I returned to the motel and found an envelope slid under the door. No name. Inside, a folded note and a photograph. The photo showed Emma sitting at a cafe table, unaware. Across from her, Nathan, both smiling. On the back of the photo, one line in block letters: "Keep quiet or she disappears." I sat down slowly, letting the fear wash through me, then settle into something colder. They still thought they could control me. 10 minutes later, there was a knock. 3 soft taps. When I opened the door, Linda was standing there, perfectly dressed, calm as always. "May I come in?" I didn't move. "How did you find me?" She smiled faintly. "Mary, you're not as invisible as you think. People talk. Cameras see. Don't be dramatic." I stepped aside wordlessly. She entered, looked around the room. The files, the notes, the computer. "You've been busy." "I know what you did," I said quietly. Her expression didn't change. "What we did, Mary. You think Richard was innocent? He played his part. We all did." I stared at her. "He faked his death because of you." She shrugged lightly. "He made his choices. He was going to drag us all down. You should be grateful he's gone." "He's not." That caught her off guard. Her eyes flicked toward me, a small pulse of irritation breaking her composure. "Be careful," she said softly. "You have a daughter, a family. This isn't your fight." I took a slow step forward. "It is now." For the first time, I saw real anger flash behind her mask. "You don't understand who you're dealing with." "I understand perfectly." Her jaw tightened. "Then understand this. You won't win. You can't." "I already have," I said. "You just don't see it yet." She stared at me for a long moment, then smiled again, almost pitying. "You sound just like him." "Thank you." When she left, I locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed, my hands steady. I'd spent weeks running, doubting, grieving. Now I felt none of that. Only purpose. That night, Jane sent me a message with an attachment, a copy of a bank transfer from Collins Group Holdings to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The signature at the bottom, Nathan Pierce. It was exactly what I needed. I uploaded it to a private server, along with every file I'd collected. Then I sent one final text from the prepaid phone. To unknown. You wanted me quiet. Instead, I'm ready to talk. I deleted the message history and sat back. Outside, the wind picked up. I thought of Richard. Wherever he was, whatever he was hiding from. For the first time, I felt certain we were moving toward the same truth. Fear was gone. Only resolve remained. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because the air felt unnaturally still. The kind of silence that always comes before something breaks. Jane had managed to contact someone inside the district attorney's office, a man who owed her brother a favor. She said if we could hand over verified evidence, he'd open a sealed investigation against Collins Group Holdings. It was our only chance to make everything public before they could bury it again. The meeting was scheduled for noon in an empty warehouse by the river. Neutral ground, cameras off, no traceable signals. I arrived early, wearing the same coat I'd worn to Richard's funeral. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. I brought a single flash drive. The complete record of every illegal transaction, signed contracts, emails, offshore links. Everything Richard had died, or pretended to die, to protect. But before Jane or the attorney arrived, a black SUV pulled up outside. The same one I'd seen across the church that day. Two men stepped out first, large, expressionless, the kind who never ask questions. And then Linda emerged, immaculate as always, followed by Nathan. So that was it. They hadn't come to talk. They'd come to stop it. Linda approached with a calm smile. "You've made quite a mess, Mary." I didn't move. "You killed one man already. You want to make it two?" She laughed softly. "Oh, please, don't be melodramatic. You think this is about murder? This is about control, about family." Nathan stepped forward. "You could have kept quiet. We offered you safety. You chose this." I looked straight at him. "You threatened my daughter." "She's fine," he said coldly. "As long as you stay reasonable." "That's the problem," I said. "I stopped being reasonable the day I saw my husband at his own funeral." The words hung in the air. Nathan's expression twitched. Linda's smile faltered just slightly. So they hadn't known I'd seen him. I took a step closer. "You covered everything perfectly, but you didn't count on one thing. He's still alive." For the first time, Linda's control cracked. "That's impossible." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened the gallery, a single image Jane had helped recover from a traffic camera near Route 27 the night of the accident. The photo was grainy, but clear enough. Richard, stepping out of a dark car. Alive. Linda's face drained of color. "Where is he?" I asked quietly. Nathan's voice broke through the silence, sharper now. "You have no idea what you're doing. He's gone, Mary. He ran. He left you behind." "Funny," I said. "Because he texted me that day. Told me to run. Told me they were watching us. Who else would have known that?" For a second, no one spoke. Then, from behind them, a voice. "She's right." I turned. He stood there. Older. Thinner, but unmistakably him. Richard. Linda spun around, eyes wide. "You shouldn't have come back." He stepped closer, his gaze fixed on her. "You left me no choice. You tried to erase me. You nearly killed David Holloway. You thought you could do the same to me." Nathan's hand moved slightly, toward his pocket. Richard saw it first. "Don't." I moved before I could think, pulling the small voice recorder from my bag and pressing play. Linda's voice filled the air, the recording Jane had made secretly during their last phone call. "Be careful," Linda's voice said. "You have a daughter. This isn't your fight." Then, my reply. "It is now." The men hesitated, uncertain. The moment broke. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint at first, then growing louder. Jane had done it. The DA's contact had alerted the police. Linda looked at me, fury burning behind her perfect calm. "You don't know what you've done." "I know exactly what I've done," I said. I stopped pretending. The SUV doors slammed as her men tried to leave, but police vehicles cut them off at the entrance. Officers shouted commands, lights flashing across the warehouse walls. Nathan froze, eyes darting between Linda and the approaching officers. "They can't prove anything," he hissed. "They can," I said quietly. "Every transfer, every signature, every threat." Linda's mask fell completely. "You think you've won? This isn't the end." "For you, maybe not," Richard said. "For us, it is." When the police surrounded them, she didn't resist. She just looked at me once more, a faint, almost amused smile returning to her lips. "You always were too sentimental." Then they took her away. I stood there, my body trembling only now that it was over. Richard turned to me slowly. For a long moment, we didn't speak. Then he said, almost whispering, "I wanted to tell you, but if they knew you were alive—" "I understand," I said. My voice broke slightly. but I didn't care. You did what you had to do. He looked exhausted, older than I remembered. You saved us both. I shook my head. No, you did. I just finished it. He smiled faintly, a tired human smile. You always do. Outside, the sirens faded. The world, for the first time in months, felt quiet again. I reached for his hand. It was warm, real, solid. And for the first time since that rainy morning at the church, I believed in what I saw. The following days moved like a slow tide. Everything happening at once, yet feeling strangely quiet. Linda and Nathan were arrested that night. The police found the offshore accounts, the falsified documents, the audio recordings. Every piece matched the files I'd given Jane in the district attorney's office. There was no room for denial. By morning, the headlines had already begun. Corruption scandal at prominent law firm. Sister of deceased attorney charged in fraud investigation. They still called Richard deceased, at least for now. He stayed hidden, out of public sight, while I handled the interviews with the investigators. They asked questions with that mix of curiosity and disbelief reserved for stories that sound like fiction. I told them the truth, every piece of it. When I mentioned that my husband was alive, one detective just stared at me. Mrs. Evans, are you sure? Yes, I said. You'll find him when you start looking in the right places. I didn't tell them where he was. Not yet. He needed time. We both did. For the first few nights, we stayed at a safe house arranged by the DA's office. A small cabin near the edge of town, overlooking the woods. It wasn't much, but it was quiet. We sat together on the porch the first evening, watching the sun set behind the trees. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Richard said, I thought you'd hate me for what I did. I did, I said softly. For a while? He nodded, accepting it. I wanted to protect you. I thought if I disappeared, they'd stop watching you. They didn't. I know. I underestimated them. I turned to look at him. No. You underestimated me. That made him smile. The first real smile I'd seen in months. We talked for hours that night. He told me everything. How he'd discovered the firm's fraud, how Linda and Nathan had been laundering money through fake development projects, how they'd used his name to cover the transfers. When I confronted her, he said, she didn't even deny it. She said it was too late to undo anything, that I could either stay quiet or disappear. So I did both. He'd staged the accident with help from a contact who owed him a favor, burned another car, and vanished into the system. But Linda had kept watching me, maybe to make sure he never resurfaced. Then you saw me at the funeral, he said, almost in disbelief. I wasn't supposed to be there. I just needed to see you one last time. And I needed to see you to start fighting back, I said. We both laughed quietly. It wasn't joy. It was relief. The investigation went public within a week. The evidence was overwhelming. Linda was charged with conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction of justice. Nathan tried to make a deal, but the prosecutors had his digital signature on every illegal transfer. He didn't stand a chance. I watched the news report of his arrest from the small TV in the cabin. He looked nothing like the man who used to sit across from me at family dinners. Polished, arrogant, sure of himself. He looked hollow now. Linda, in contrast, was composed even in handcuffs. The camera caught her giving one small, almost defiant smile before entering the courthouse. Even then, she couldn't let go of control. But this time, the story wasn't hers to tell. Emma came to the cabin after the second hearing. She hugged her father first, long, wordless, trembling. When she finally turned to me, there were tears in her eyes. You were right, she whispered. All this time. I didn't want to be, I said. She stayed with us that night, refusing to leave. For the first time in a long time, we felt like a family again. fractured, wounded, but real. The next morning, Richard sat at the kitchen table, staring at the newspaper spread out before him. "You know, we can't go back," he said. "Not to the firm, not to that life." "I know. What will we do?" I poured coffee for both of us. "We start over. Somewhere quiet. Maybe near the coast." He nodded slowly. "A clean slate." For a while, we just sat there, the only sound the rustle of wind through the trees. Later that day, we drove into town to meet the DA. The agreement was simple. Richard would testify in exchange for immunity. His testimony, combined with the digital records, would seal the case permanently. As we left the courthouse, reporters called our names, cameras flashing. I didn't answer. I just held Richard's hand. For months, I'd lived in shadows and half-truths. Now, under the bright, relentless light of day, I felt almost invisible. And that was exactly how I wanted it. We returned to the cabin one last time that night. The news showed Linda being transferred to county jail pending trial. Nathan's bail had been denied. Their empire was gone, their names turned into headlines, their influence stripped bare. I turned off the TV. Richard looked at me across the dimly lit room. "It's over," he said quietly. "Almost," I replied. He understood. Closure doesn't come from headlines. It comes from silence. From knowing that the people who once controlled your life now have no power left at all. We didn't toast or celebrate. We just sat side by side, listening to the sound of rain starting outside. Soft, steady, familiar. The same rain that had fallen the day of the funeral. Only now it sounded different. 6 months later, the trial ended. The courtroom was packed when the verdict came. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy. Fraud. Obstruction of justice. Linda barely reacted. She sat still, eyes forward, hands folded neatly in her lap, as if the entire proceeding were beneath her. Nathan wasn't as composed. He broke halfway through the testimony, shouting that he'd been manipulated, that it wasn't his fault. No one listened. His lawyer dropped his head into his hands. When the judge read the final sentence, 25 years without parole for Linda, 15 for Nathan, I didn't feel triumph, just relief. The kind that comes after holding your breath for too long. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, asking how it felt to see justice done. I said nothing. I just kept walking. That evening, Richard and I left the city. We drove through the night, not speaking much, the headlights carving a thin line of safety through the darkness. By dawn, the skyline was gone behind us. We settled near the coast. A small town with no reason to care who we were. The kind of place where people nod in greeting but don't ask questions. We rented a small house near the water. Old wood, creaking floors, sea air in every corner. It suited us. Our days became simple. I started teaching again. Part-time at a local community center. Literature mostly. The students were young, polite, and uninterested in my past. Richard worked remotely for a legal nonprofit, quietly, under another name. It was enough. Sometimes at night, I'd wake to find him sitting by the window staring out at the sea. The first few times I asked what he was thinking about, he'd just smile faintly and say, "Everything." Eventually, I stopped asking. I understood. We didn't talk about Linda or Nathan anymore. There was nothing left to say. The news mentioned them only once after the sentencing, a short article noting that Linda's appeal had been denied. After that, they vanished from the headlines, replaced by newer scandals, fresher names. But I kept one clipping, just one. It wasn't about their crimes. It was a photo. Linda being led out of the courtroom, still immaculate, still unbroken. Beneath it, a single sentence from the article. The Collins family empire has collapsed amid allegations of systemic corruption. Collapsed. That was enough. Emma visited often. She'd moved out of the city, started over too. She was quieter now, older somehow. Sometimes she'd bring old photos, sometimes just groceries. Once, she brought a small box. "I thought you'd want this," she said. Inside was my old phone, the one from the day of the funeral. I'd turned it over to the investigators months ago. They'd returned it now, case closed. When she left, I charged it almost out of curiosity. Most messages were gone, but one remained in the archive. The first one. "Run. They're watching us." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. That chapter was over. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours again. I planted flowers in the yard, something I hadn't done in years. Richard built a small shed near the back fence. He said it helped to fix things with his hands. Some evenings we'd walk along the beach. We didn't hold hands often. We didn't need to. The silence between us was its own kind of peace. Once, near sunset, he said quietly, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't seen me that day?" "All the time," I said. He nodded, eyes on the horizon. "You could have believed the lie. Moved on." "I tried," I said, "but something didn't fit. You always said the truth has a shape. I just followed it." He smiled. "And it led you back." The tide crept in, soft and relentless. I let the water reach my shoes and didn't move. The cold felt grounding. A reminder that we were still here, still real. That night, I wrote a single line in my journal. The first entry in months. Sometimes surviving isn't about escaping. It's about staying until the lie collapses under its own weight. I closed the book and set it aside. The storm was over, not because everything was good again, but because everything was finally true. Linda would spend the rest of her life behind walls, her power reduced to memories. Nathan's career was gone, his name synonymous with betrayal. And us, we were quiet, anonymous, forgotten by the world, which was exactly what we wanted. The sea outside kept its rhythm, steady and indifferent. Somewhere beneath its surface, the wreckage of other lives lay buried, stories no one would ever tell. But ours had found its ending. Not a happy one. Not tragic. Just real. And that, after everything, was enough. If you liked this story, please support us. Subscribe to our channel, leave a few kind words in the comments, and like it. It helps us to produce even stronger stories.